do philosophers only?
Why do philosophers study all the fields of sociology, for example? How are we determined? Yeah, stuff like that. How are they? Are you sure you want to write? If you have your own writing now.
That'd be okay.
Yeah. Let me know when you're ready to go. Yeah.
Ready, Dave? So thanks for inviting me down to your office.
Yeah, nice name. My office here.
Your nerve centre.
My nerve centre, absolutely. I'm running the world from here. It'll all change from this little office,
Well, I thought I'll just ask a few questions and conduct a little interview, really, just to see if we can find other routes to talking about some of the subjects that you discuss in your work and in your rants.
Yeah.
But on the whole, you claim to be a philosopher, and a lot of it seems to be built around philosophy. What makes somebody a philosopher?
Well, we're all, by definition of being born, philosophers, basically, our essence. Philosophy just deals with our essence. But some of us, just sort of look at philosophy as a separate issue, philosophers chase what we are in the mind, and how far down the rabbit hole goes, so to speak. How far down, the mind goes into nature, into the quantum level. That's metaphysics and philosophy.
What does the quantum level mean?
Well, that's a term I use because most people understand that conceptualization of quantum. Atom, small, down to the tiniest level. But in philosophy, we chase it. We call it metaphysics. We're chasing it in a different way. The contemporary scientists, if you like, what you see outside your window today is looking at the quantum level. In a vacuum, they're looking in the wrong place. Their studies are important. Absolutely important. But they're looking in the wrong place to understand. The quantum level at a unified level. The mind has to unify the position. Therefore, philosophers study psychology and language to understand how we are constituted as in nature. We understand that we're men and women and we want ice cream and music and dance and love and families and culture. That's all given, okay? Even though we've messed it up a little bit, okay? Mindsets and so on, like I've often discussed, I've already discussed and so on. But if we look at psychology in depth, we also can write it into, we're trying to write it into a systemized package. Philosophers have been trying to do this for centuries. So we can actually, find what we are, concur in what we are, which means we can unify our species in one single position, and from there onwards, live in a utopian framework and, travel transcendentally, if you like. Heavy answer, but anyway, that's the way it comes.
Okay. Why are you so keen to get out there and talk to people? Why philosophy? Why is it so important?
Well, it's important to me because, I mean, it's...
No, sorry, cut that question.
Yeah.
Sorry, forget that question, Dave. Just going to go into another question. Hang on. If people wanted to find out more about philosophy, who would they study? Who have you been reading? Who are the philosophers out there that you aspire to the most, I suppose?
Right. Well, my favourite two philosophers are Kant and Thoreau. Thoreau has influenced Gandhi and so on, and painted our nature, painted our beauty, painted our genius into a beautiful, into words. He's the Mozart of words. So I love Henry Thoreau for just documenting what we are in essence, to each other, based on equality and so on and so on. And so he was a great measurement of us to document us in a beautiful way. But, one of my favourite philosophers is Kant, because Kant went after the mind. He tried to systemize it, he tried to understand our mind, like I said, as a single package, and how this single package, evolved and revolved around, evolution as a package, how we've evolved through ourselves, X through Y to the point of X, all things tend towards the archetype. So we were looking for a track that brought us back to the archetype, and we were looking for it in the mind. Now, who's a good read? Well, I've read them all, and Kant, I suppose, is the heaviest, Kantian philosophy, pure mathematics, mathematics without the numbers, but it's like, Kant didn't have the answers, let's just start there, I've ironed out a lot of edges, I've ironed out loads of edges, where Kant was missing, I've took from Kant what I could and I shelved the rest,
Explain an example, where was Kant missing?
Well, I mean, Kant is looking at we have to go into sort of a priori knowledge, which is heavy material to go into.
Which means what?
It's how the mind, in a simple way, is how the mind is aligned, if you like, along nature's fundamentals subjectively.
Okay.
The mind has to align itself with certain aspects of nature, certain fundamental laws of nature. And if the mind can line itself up with these fundamental laws and know them to be immutable, which means absolutely solid, grounded, cannot remove them from the mind, then it was a priori. Okay, now that's a sort of simple look at something that's very complicated. Okay,
this was Kant's position.
This was Kant. He was looking at these positions, how the mind set itself up in pure positions. What position, for example, we're all structured around a three-dimensional reality in the same way. In the mind, I understand this to be intuitively three dimensions, so do you. You can't get out of that model. If you can, I'd like to see 4 dimensions, okay? But until that point, your language can't relay 3 dimensions, okay? So Kant was looking at how evolved we were and how pure the positions could be made up, Now, obviously, I'm a more evolved perspective than Kant, whether you like it or not. I am a more evolved perspective than Kant. Kant wasn't as fluent as this to explain it. I am literally trying to come out to humanity and jump into their minds and recondition and manipulate their minds, okay? And there's nothing to be afraid of there because our minds have been manipulated. If you understand language, you've been manipulated around it and its meanings and what it denotes and blah, 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 blah. You understand geometry, you've been manipulated around it. So the mind can be manipulated. I've just manipulated you into a position that the mind can be manipulated. So let's not be afraid of manipulation, okay? Now, understanding Kant and Wittgenstein and language and psychology lets me play with the mind. It means I can jump into your mind and set up pure positions, okay? And people might go, so what? But if we can unify positions in the mind, okay, just let me make this point. If we can unify positions in the mind, we can lock down everything that we are, okay, everything that we are as a species. Therefore, there'll be no more war, no more racism or sexism. This is why it's important. And it's this heavy, the debate. The debate is as heavy as I am. I'm not just a man babbling. I'm a man with a heavy debate. Two stand out, Kant and Henry Thoreau. Thoreau because, he was magic. He influenced Gandhi and so on. He painted our world. He painted our nature up into a beautiful package. Into a beautiful bubble. We all operate. Hitler painted the world in a bubble and it was ugly. Thoreau painted what humanity were in a bubble and it was beautiful. Okay, so he left a subjective pyramid behind, if you like. There was a phenomenal transcendental measurement of what we are as a species. And how we should relate to each other and how, our language is designed to be poetic and beautiful, not vulgar and, mediocre and all that, etc., He addressed communication, but he was beautiful in how he addressed it. How he used the language was amazing, okay? We cannot serve 2 masters. It takes more than a day's devotion to know and possess the wealth of the day. Okay, we cannot serve 2 masters. For example, if you're in an office right now, and even if it's Orwellian slavery, you're still in the office sitting down, ticking in from 9 to 5, whatever. That's Orwellian in itself because you're there. That's all that matters. The machine is being oiled. Okay, now you're serving that master whether you like it or not. Whereas Thoreau said, if we serve nature as a master and just trust nature, tomato trees grow and apple trees grow, and that is economics, and we just are afraid of it because we've decided to make it more complex, and we turned it into a pseudo package. Anyway, I'm digressing back to Thoreau. The point is, Thoreau was about that. If we understand him, there's 2 standards: standard and substandard. Capitalism is substandard. Monarchy is substandard. Vatican is sub-fucking standard. Okay, this is a standard, description. Okay, we're a standard, and Thoreau was about how standard we are, genius. So on the other hand, there was Kant, okay? Kant was the mathematics that lay underneath Thoreau's theories, Thoreau's mindset. Okay, Kant was trying to put a systemized package together, in the mind. He was trying to unify, a position in the mind, around how we are constituted, true nature, as nature, etc. As am I. That's my work.
Is that the definition of the systemized package?
Well, philosophers, like myself and Kant and others have been trying to systemize what we are as a species, okay? We want to systemize it, okay? This is where, this is why we love philosophy. We're playing in a metaphysical field, I'll explain in a minute. But we're playing, we're swimming in a field and we're trying to, in the field, we understand there's a language in there, a second language. Like we have 2 languages. One is to do with the empirical world, which people use every day. Empirical, body, what you can sense, right. Smell, the body, what we can touch, what we measure, E equals MC squared was measured against an empirical reality, okay? But we're looking at a heavier reality, therefore we have to look at this reality through a heavier language, and this language is kind of a priori language, if you like, which is Kantian speak, not double speak, singular speak, into complexity. That's what, it is. We speak it up in a singular way, linear, one phonetic sound at a time, okay? It's like a linear way, but we're trying to explain a complex, conceptualization, put it into an objective frame so we can all understand it subjectively, lock it down and concur, etc. Kant was trying to put that package together. I have put it together. That's a fact.
You mean he was trying to put that package together but hadn't concluded?
Yeah, he was on the periphery. Kant, I like Kant because he's a hobby, but Kant, when you understand Kant was beautiful, and he did add to philosophy in the biggest way I've seen based on the old paradigm. Okay, I don't operate in that paradigm. He was trying to unify.
The old paradigm.
Well, to me, it's an old paradigm because everyone, including Kant, worked in a linear package. I work in a complex way. I don't talk in a linear manner. I use linear structure, but I explain my words into conceptualized packages. I talk about impositions and dispositions of monarchies, if you like. I talk about impositions and dispositions of empiricism and of metaphysics, and I can go into all these subjects. Like different perspectives, different realities. So can you, because I understand a priori language now. Okay, I've unified the package. I can unify mathematics. Linear mathematics, E equals mc squared. Exponential mass energy. Blah 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 blah. The point is, it can all be unified in a systemized package right now. Okay, and because I'm in a scientific limbo, I sound like fruitcake. Okay, because I'm in scientific limbo, it's hard to relay, but there is a language in what I'm talking about here. I'm trying to wrap mathematical concepts around our field of thinking so I can lock it down and go, this is who we are subjectively. And that's what Kant is about, and that's what I'm about, and that's what lots of us are about, So, I don't know. I talk a lot, don't I? Right, well, I'll just show you a perspective of Kant so that I would agree on. We looked at what you call the axioms of intuition, okay? And axioms, in a simple way, are rules of inference. For example, if you go into a museum and you all speak quietly, it's kind of a written axiom, if you like, okay? A written rule in the mind where everyone just speaks accordingly, okay? So there's the axiom is a rule of inference, okay? So the axioms of intuition. Now let's look at intuition. We all intuit. You can intuit. I'm in this room right now and I can intuit you're here. It means we feel it in essence. If I don't have to bring up the words to explain what I know. And the same for you. So we intuit reality, okay? This is where our reality starts in intuition, right. In the intuitional bed, okay? So if I want to sort of explain, so Kant was looking at the axioms of intuition, okay? And the axioms now, in relation to one package, I would say, we'll call it extensive magnitude, okay? And I will explain, okay? Now this is complex, but stay with it. Like extensive magnitude. Kant looked at the fact that the mind could extend itself, okay? Now, what that means is this. I can break off a piece of any part of my body or your body in the empirical realm, or any piece of wall or ice cream or any piece of nature. I can break off a piece, okay? Now once I have a piece, I have a part, okay? Now part means mass, okay? And the mind understands these concepts, okay? It means it's putting a conceptualized picture together. This is what the mind is doing, it's putting a picture together, okay? So the mind understands now, so once I have a part, okay, we can concur on this, which means we can agree on this. I have a piece of mass. Now if there's a part there, it means it can be broken in half. That means to aggregate, okay? We can aggregate the part. Now that means to extend it in Kant's talk. We can extend it. So the mind can, through the axioms of extension, which means we can understand the mind being extended. Now, that's not, the simplicity of that is not important. What matters is the complexity of the position. The fact that we can all align our minds up with that position and align our minds with that fundamental position in the mind. This is real psychology because that happens in the subjective bed. Yeah, it means we're all aligned with that movement, which means we can all extend. Now, when you step back then and get into Kant again, when you extend things, we can extend. When we look at say racism, we don't just understand the concept of it. Okay, we can understand. We actually conceptualize it, conceive it, and then we extend it. Okay, so we intuit the extension along, say what slavery meant. Okay, for the body and mind, which meant imposition, which means imbalance, and an imposition of imbalance and so on, which means people were knocked out of balance. We all know the history, blah, 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 blah. We all know the history, okay, by extending it. So the mind can play with different tools. It has tools, basically. There's so many tools, it's hard to explain them all. And Kant was looking at to simplify, basically. Kant was looking at the mind's tools and what they could do. Yeah. And one of the things they could do was extend. Yeah. And if it could extend, it could extend in every picture, okay? It could extend mathematics. It could extend our view of women's history or black history or Irish history. It could extend our view. That means the mind was always moving in emotion around whichever particular composition of reality it was looking at, whether it was history or biology or psychology. It was able to move in emotion, okay? And that means the mind is able to do that. That's a transcendental movement of the mind, okay? The point is that applies to every single human being, whether you're a queen or a pope or a black man or a white man or whatever. Agreed. That means that's agreed. It is agreed. Therefore, I've shown you, whether you like it or not, a movement that happens universally in the collective consciousness, because that happens in everyone does that. That's how the mind moves around reality. Now this has to be discussed. Think about that. This is not some psychologist talking about can you sleep well or are you depressed or do you not go dancing anymore. I'm just trying to show you a fundamental position in the mind wrapped around fundamental subjective reality. This is transcendentalism, and I can add 100 million hours of information to this periphery picture. No matter how crazy this may sound, I'm using concepts like metaphysics and all that and imposition and disposition to wrap in a package, which makes no sense right now. But if you watch it and study it for enough hours, like I have studied Kant for 500 hours, that's like listening to somebody for 500 hours to understand, oh yes, is that what you're saying about this world? I've given them 500 hours of my time to how we look at dimension, why we look at dimension, why we extend our minds around dimension and so on. We're an evolutionary entity coming back to life through body. X, we are X at the moment, which is indeterminable towards the present, but we have one take on X, which lies in the subjective bed. And when we get into the a priori realms, we actually are X, okay? And this is all going to be new revolutionary theories and evolutionary theories. This is how we're going to move forward out of the old paradigm, okay? I find it very hard to put a language together when I'm in a limbo on my own, when people don't understand the concepts I'm even talking about. Well, first of all, a paradigm, let's explain it in a simple way. You know, one time people believed the world was flat, now they believe it to be round. So the mindset changed. Yeah. That means we can say that's what a paradigm shifting. Absolutely, but you know, not everybody will know what a paradigm is. So, you know, it's important. We know, so the field of thought changes, it broadens basically, okay? Mm-hmm. So right now, I'll show you a linear framework, okay? Now, if you believe, like, you know, if for example, you know, we'll take, you know, Catholicism, okay? Let's look at Catholicism, a linear package. We can have concepts. It's a language drives that too. It's a mindset. It's an ideological perspective, therefore it's related to subjective mind. Now we can stand back and look at that right now, okay? And we can look at what's happening. You know, let's pull out one concept, a bastard. Now this bastard was a concept created but was artificial, and we know this because of complex reality. So let me show you the two perspectives, okay? Complex realities lets us see this, okay? We're going to show you a conclusion in a minute from this perspective. If you use a concept like bastard, it's artificial because there's no body in nature that carries it a priori. Right, which means this: it was only married to the ideological framework of a Catholic framework, which, when we get down to the fundamentals of nature, it was primitive. It was made up, popey stuff and bishopy stuff and so on. Married to God, wonder by walks on water, all the variables. It's easy to mock because it's puny and tiny, not the essence of love, but the rest of it, bullshit. Right? Now we know this. I don't need to go into this in detail. If I do, right, you've got to catch up. Now this is all linear because bastard, she's this, he's that, get that. There's the Pope. There's the priest. What did you do? Who's she? What does that say? Is this my car? I have a house. It's everything is that. That's how Nazism worked. Linear, abacus, you know what I mean? Like reactionary, basically, glib, you know, doing the best they can given the circumstances. But anyway, we can package that up and see it like that. Now, we know we can go into this because of history for hours. Catholicism was a primitive ideological framework. It didn't understand the constitution of people. It reacted to them and said women were this and men were that, and we don't need to go into all the biological variables, but it's transcendentalism that lets us go into this. This is important. This is not, transcendentalism isn't just for praying and going, we're all one. It's a tool. People are not going to understand it for a long time, okay? You know, I'm stuck with reality first, and I'll explain that perspective. I'm trying to explain, you know, bring a whole new realm of thinking into the world, you know. That was one time, you know, people trying to bring in mathematics, you know, people talked about fruitcakes. What are you talking about? You know, 1 + 1 = 2, you know, and so on, you know, adding and subtracting, multiplying. Why that? Okay, but eventually paradigms shift and that creeps in. Okay, that creeps in. Now the very fact we can even transcend that and see how paradigms creep in means the mind is moving, it's in motion along that position, okay? Now if I want to pick out, like I said, monarchy or Vatican or slavery or any institution I want, any composition, if there's an institution, it's instituted by its composition, okay? Understanding it's instituted by its composition is complex. Okay, that's not just how you spell composition or how you spell the word institute. It's not spelling. Okay, this is real thinking with how things move. Okay, transcendentally. So, excuse me. That's, you know. So we're looking at, if we're able to look at the whole paradigm of a whole bubble of Catholicism. Okay, that's a phenomenal sweep in the mind, in the subjective mind, to be able to put it out there into an objective framework. We can't deny this. That's a phenomenal. We've been measured up to now on I have a car or I have a house, but if we can be measured against the fact that the mind can, you know, dwarf and it can lift itself out and debate. You know, we're brains debating. That's all we're doing. We're trying to find intuitive alignment behind these phonetic sounds. You and I, that's all we're trying to do. If I was talking up in Chinese right now or Russian or any language, I would be trying to align you with the same position in reality. Okay, right. That's complex. If you understand complexity, you don't operate in a linear manner. You know, if you want to own a slave, for example, if you want to own a man and believe he's a slave, the conceptualization of slave has to be in your mindset. Therefore, your mind is set around a man as a biological and psychological entity in the wrong manner, because we know through transcendentalism and the complexity of it, this man suffered or this woman suffered slavery, oppression, it oppressed the nature and so on. That's a complex position. If you understand the complex position, you cannot take a slave. Yet judges approved it and sanctioned it. You know, yes, Your Honor, keep the slave. Chop up women and chop up culture and get me the dollars. It's all linear. They don't understand. They've heard the words I'm using: complexity, linear, paradigm. They don't understand how to put them together. They don't understand X disposed through Y to the point of X, for example. They don't understand synthetic priori knowledge. You know what I mean? Like I talk for 500 hours to explain it. 500 hours to, you know, you learn piano for 500 hours or kung fu for 500 hours or weightlifting, but who wants to play mind? Who wants to play ball in the mind like I can play? You know, come to discuss linguistics and epistemology and just using big words for the sake of. You know, you can see him a fast thinker. You must be able to see him a fast thinker trying to put something together. It sounds scatty because we're trying to shift paradigm. It's going to sound scatty for centuries. Kant sounds scatty. If you read Kant, he's scatty. He's all over the shop, trying to put all over the shop together in a synthetic a priori fashion. What does that mean to people? I need to stop for a second to get some more. I'm just trying to show something new. I'm trying to show it already in the description of what I'm trying to paint, okay? How I show linear frameworks, and I'm trying to desperately go, this is a complex framework, you know, transcendently complex, and so on. And now I'm aware of the fact, because of the position I'm in, that it does seem like a lot of madness and so on, what's going on here, and, you know, it's talking fast and so on, but I am trying to bring something new.
What?
You know, I'm trying to bring in a discussion about the mind, okay, and I believe I can systemize it, okay? I believe I can systemize it around certain aspects of reality, certain conceptual notions, namely imposition, disposition, synthetic a priori knowledge, and so on. Now,
that is new.
No, the concepts have been used, okay, the concepts, but how they've been put together is new. How they were put together, how we place them, how we align our minds with each other, okay? We have to kind of write we have to start writing a new three-dimensional alphabet, if you like, okay? You know, to structure, you know, mathematics to date is structured in a linear framework, okay? E equals mc squared is linear, whether we like it or not. It's a conceptualization of energy and mass and its exponential movement within circumstantial parameters. That's all it is,
right.
Okay? Therefore, it's a transcendental structure, held in position just to look at it and relay it to an alignment of reality. Now, I can see this position, okay? That's a complex look at E equals mc squared. That itself is more complex than E equals mc squared. You know, a complex look at E equals mc squared is complex, okay, in a simplified way. It's a simple fashion. Now, if I can show E equals mc squared and how it's set up, you know, in a simple manner, in a subjective mind, you know, I can show you how...
What do you mean by that? Carry on explaining that.
Right, carry on explaining that, right. Well, even though we use numbers to denote it, E, and it has a certain denotation value, E, energy and mass, and it's squared up, okay? What we're actually looking at is energy, okay? Energy and mass changing together exponentially, how they move together, how they speed up together, and so on. You know, how if you're running down the road, you know, and for 100 meters and it takes you 10 minutes, and then you put a 5-stone person on your back, it'll take you 20 minutes, okay? The exponential changes because the energy and mass, input, output changes. Now, I understand that because my mind is structured around that position. Yeah. Now, you understand it too because your mind is structured around that position. So we both can understand too that our minds are structured around complex positions. Yeah. This leaves us in a complex state. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, why are we in this complex state, and why are we in it in the face of what we're operating around? If it's a linear state out there, complex states produce utopia. That's my point. And I can show that. I can change every, you know, Zarathustra at your service. I can change every constitution the way it's written based on new language, okay? Now, I'm not going to expect it to be explained that in the camera today. I can just give you a taste. You know, I know what I'm talking about. The very fact that I'm trying to say the world has to start discussing language and how we're structured around it, you know, in the face of each other, is a shift in consciousness. Well, I'm not talking about discussing page 3 models and catwalk nonsense and bonos and George Bush in the fucking White House and what the Israeli government are doing and what the Palestinian government are doing. I'm talking about universally discussing mindsets. Philosophers have to come to the table with that, because that is where the source of all information lies, and that is where the source of how we are constituted lies. So therefore, even if we know nothing about it, even if we know nothing, not one iota, that has to become the focus. Utopia, remember this, and remember I've said this, it was always been written in the moment, just many of us negate this, okay? Now that's a simple thing that's been taught before. Like, for example, racism is wrong in this moment, it was wrong 200 years ago, and it'll be wrong in 500 years, meaning it's always wrong in the moment, okay? Now, 200 years ago, some people got that. Okay, and yet some didn't, and today some get it. Okay, we get now. If you take away racism for a start, that's one ism. That's a little piece of utopia improved. If you take away sexism, that's a little piece of it. So, and we look at all of the things that create isms, mindsets. This is I'm bringing up these issues. Mindsets, isms. If you are a racist, your mind is set around people in a xenophobic way. Right. That's what it means to have an ism. Yeah. If you believe women should be behind a kitchen sink, sexism, remember, denotes something. It denotes a movement of motion in the mind. It means the mind is looking at women in this manner, okay? So it means the mind is structured the wrong way around what's standard, which means women as philosophers and poets and, you know, brains, okay?
Going back to Kant.
Yeah, well, Kant is wrapped into all of this, you know, Kant and Thoreau. I'm painting it in metaphors, therefore it's Thoreau, but I'm trying to structure it around impositions and dispositions and compositions and our intuitive idea of them, therefore it's Kantian. Okay, I'm trying to bring in both. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to get on with using Wittgenstein, if you like. Philosophical propositions aren't needed. Okay, the professors in schools are stuck with that. Let's play ball. The professors in school right now are debating philosophical propositions aren't needed. Wittgenstein. Okay, well, I've moved it on because I can show you what he meant by that. Okay, and I'll show you. Let's proposition something. Let's proposition reality in relation to mankind and womankind. Now, this will take a few minutes. Okay, but let's proposition it. So let's proposition mankind in relation to slavery. We'll go back there so we can proposition what slavery is and proposition what mankind is. The proposition means we propose what mankind is, okay, in the subjective mind, okay? We can go in deeper, we'll stay in the periphery. We can propose mankind as a biology and psychology. That's simple.
Right.
Okay, we can propose them, as a psychology and a biology. So if we propose slavery, we have to propose it in relation to a biology and psychology. Okay, this is why we understand racism to be wrong. Forget that it is wrong. Let's look at why we're understanding it to be wrong. That's a different ball game, right? Yeah. Let's look at it subjectively. Subjectively now we're all wrapped around this position. Okay, that means I can play with positions in the mind, okay, to align you with them. Yeah. So slavery was wrong because the conceptualization of it meant the body and mind of this person belonged to the body and mind of another person, okay, who tried to draw a distinction in class. So let's look at class now and mindset. So the mind had its own class idea, class ideological spectrum. Okay, it's a class, therefore it's an ideology in the mind. So they idealized their framework around people, and some people became slaves to them, and etc., etc. We know all the variables, right? Yes. It means their mind was set around man and woman in the incorrect manner, as Wittgenstein would say, outside the correct categories of thinking. Yes. Therefore their propositions were wrong. Now, if we can proposition that and see the negativity in it and rule out the negativity, the proposition then is filled with reality, biology and psychology left in a balanced position. Okay, imbalance has been ruled out. That's the correct position. Therefore I've propositioned that position. But now that you can subjectively lock down that position as a constitution, philosophical propositions are no longer needed. Now, that may seem whatever, but the answer was in that description, because I can apply how I've just said that to everything, and you'll keep coming up with a yes answer. That has been described in minds. That's why slavery, why we're transcending it and seeing the wrong in it. I challenge any psychologist in a beautiful way. I would bring courtesy with a challenge, right? Chess, if you like, to come in and deconstruct that the reality is Blair's mind is structured around reality in the incorrect manner. This is why it's so dangerous. Think about it. He PRs himself. He's constituted. Yes, he has the same phenomenological apparatus as you and I have. He's evolved with it, but he's not using them in the correct way, and he's not using them based on what has been Kantian philosophy, based on Thoreau's philosophy. And why have our geniuses, why have our geniuses documented if we don't use their genius? That's a fair point of genius in itself. Okay, why would we have the value of our utopian models that have been documented? The philosophers who have spoken about utopian models, okay, and documented it in an incorrect manner. How can we let the village idiot, distort it and mutilate it and turn it into Bibles and Korans and monarchies? Well, that's what happened with primitive mindsets. That's primitive. Where are the professors in school saying, let's discuss today monarchy because it's primitive, and let the psychologists agree, because psychology has to agree with this position, because anything that's structured against the mind as a mindset that brings oppression is a negative for minds. Therefore, all psychologists have to be anti-capitalism, anti-monarchy, anti-Vatican, because these things oppressed our nature. This is not a debate anymore. This is advancing how we think, broadening our levels of conception and awareness,
Why do you want to focus so much on going into schools, colleges and universities and talking to not only students but teachers and professors?
Well, that's a good question and an important question, because at the end of the day, as much as I rant and I rally on about this and that, I'm just a man, I'm a philosopher who wants to come in and talk to like-minded people. And I do appreciate one thing, even though I'm anti a lot of the establishment, like hierarchical frames and so on, I'm not anti the establishment of knowledge and our search for it, and I love the fact that there are amazing Chomskys in there, amazing professors, in universities who actually do the studies, who translate Kant from one language to another and so on, and Thoreau, and they are trying to bring our species to life in the brain, and they're all beautiful, all aspects of science. I love all scientists. I don't like the fact that you would use your scientific hands to create bombs and weapons of mass destruction and tanks and so on and minefields, but we'll get back on track soon. But the fact that you would create everything from incubators to understandings and trying to look at DNA and so on, biology of us and so on, is beautiful. So I want to talk to these people because I believe when I'm around these people, they'll ask appropriate questions for each subject. Like biologists can ask me about my view in the mind of biology, and I can show them structures, that will help look at evolution and so on in a different way. And it takes time. Remember, I can't just do it in one sitting here. Relay. I know you wanted me to explain mathematics to you, and I know, I tried to, and I know the points will have gone over so many people's heads that I'm trying to structure. It's not 1 + 1 = 2 in mathematics. It's different. It's something new, and it takes time to sit, and we have to bang heads and look, and I can answer all the Kantian questions you want, and all the questions of linguistics and language and so on that you ask, if you'll entertain me. And I want to go into the schools because that's where it is being entertained. That's where philosophy is really being entertained, okay, by some of the good professors who profess what we are in essence. And I'm just trying to profess that too. And I just want to be accepted in. I think philosophers too have to come from the streets like me, and Joe Publics have to come back to the table. I will sit at every table with politeness. I will sit at the Queen's table too, but I won't worship her, like I've said many times, as a queen. I will talk to her as Elizabeth and going, how's it going? I like to smoke giants. I don't care. What are we about in measurement of nature, or intelligence, like, forget the periphery, forget the body and all that. How are we in mind, And we got to find ourselves there. And if and I want to kickstart this revolution. It's not big enough. Few people understand Kant, and how many people are coming out. If I have to ask this question, like one of my questions is, if the institutions are so big, how come the wars are coming out of Cambridges and Oxfords? I'm not wrong about this. It's not kids who rob mobile phone theft who are responsible for wars. Let's face this, okay? The upper classes are. They can put armies on battlefields, and they profit from this. Everything to do with violence against our nature is primitive, okay? Apart from self-defense, which our governments claim, but they're not. They're on the offensive, okay? We know this, okay? Slavery was on the offensive, okay? Slaves had a right to fight back. If you're going to enslave me, then I have a right to fight back, but other than that, I bring peace, okay? Now, it's like, yes, primitive. Slavery was based. What else? Why deconstruct slavery and abhor it and just, ridicule it for what it was in essence, unless we're actually technically saying subjectively that it was primitive. Okay, therefore anyone who carried it, even the pillars of society, were structured in the incorrect manner. That's an important issue. That we were looking at mindsets that were primitive in relation to how far we've evolved now. And I've evolved this far, tough shit, in a beautiful way. And I just want to come in and I'll hug all the professors, I'll hug them all, I just want to come and talk. I don't want to have anybody whipped or mutilated, including the Queen or Blair. We have to come back to the table somewhere. The Israeli killers.
What would your first topic of conversation be?
The mind. Let's debate what you know about the mind in relation to what I know about the mind. How about that, just so I can find out? I want to find out, for example, if the Queen came to the table, how she drew a distinction in mind, how she psychologically and linguistically drew a distinction. Holding your little finger out doesn't give you a different distinction. That's a class opinion. Okay, therefore I'm refined around that opinion. I want to know how she drew a class distinction and how hierarchy have for centuries and abuses under this idea that they were better. Where did it come linguistically? Where was there a better understanding of poetry? They made up a pseudo framework of what culture was. But when we stand back philosophically and see what culture is, Brazilian people hugging and dancing is culture. Okay, not bowing down on red carpets to queens. That's not culture. That's pseudo culture. Okay, she can't have the flag. Okay, we're the argument. We're the new argument. This is not you're a communist, you're an anarchist. I'm not. I'm talking about mindsets. This is pure. How were you set around this reality different than I was, Your Majesty, to draw that distinction? Now that's a refined question. Okay, so I want the refined answer that meets that. I want to meet it epistemologically, which means how were you established metaphysically differently than I was? If you're divine, okay, how did you have those answers already? Because Kant didn't. Okay, there were big heavy answers, and we can ask big heavy questions, and so on, and on and on and on and on. Meaning the Queen was just lost in a pseudo bubble. Pseudo-intellectualism, that's what I'm afraid of. Pseudo people who have the idea of knowledge, illusionary knowledge, that's dangerous. Popes, priests, voodoo dolls, all of that fucking nonsense is mutilated and created isms. Okay, I'm challenging that by going, your mind is set the wrong way, and that's a challenge. For anyone to throw questions in any field, language and how we're structured, I can show you how our minds, I'll show you how your language is structured around the chair you're sitting on. Okay, metaphysically if you want. I'll break it down to a quantum level and how your mind is structured around the chair you're sitting around. Different perspectives and concepts, blah, 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 blah. 100 fucking million hours of it. It's hard to get it out of my head. It's hard to relay and shift the paradigm. It's going to take centuries. I'm just bubble popping. That's all I am, a bubble popping. But it's worth listening to the pop. Okay, it really is worth listening to the pop. Any Kantian question you want to ask me, I will show you the answer to it. How about that? Anything in book, anywhere, bring it out to me and I'll show you the answer to it. That's why I want to come into universities, to advance our thinking. Okay, so we can get out of this quagmire, so we can get out back into our, into our nakedness and nature, into our dancing and our loving and our philosophizing and our poeticizing, rather than trying to exploit each other and get the biggest fucking pyramid and the most money and chop up our rainforest. It's ridiculous. That's primitive. It's why it's primitive. And who's debating that at the WTO organizations? Who's debating that at the next summit they're going to hold? Let's debate the rainforest. Who's debating the mindsets and how they're structured around this planet and how dangerous that is? In relative to substandard and standard frames, so I'm bringing that fight, and if you can see it and hear it, then, listen.